Welcome back to my channel Rise and Yoga. My name is Mia and today I want to talk to you guys about something that I get asked a lot, which is what is the difference between yoga and Pilates? They're actually quite different even though people consider them to be reasonably similar. I'm going to be talking about Hatha yoga, which is a kind of generic type style, and also mat Pilates, not talking about reformer work or using any of the apparatus, just talking about on the mat. To start off with, I want to talk to you guys about the history behind both yoga and Pilates, because when we look into the history of those things, we can see that there's a really significant difference in how they were created. So yoga was initially created for monks to be able to sit still for hours and hours and hours while they meditate. So yoga was meant for them to be able to make sure that their bodies were in a good condition so that they would be able to sit still and things like that. The language used in yoga is Sanskrit generally, but even though people think that this has some kind of religious connotation, there's no religion behind yoga. It was created in India about 5,000 years ago. The teachings were started about then. It's not religious at all, and saying namaste or any of the Sanskrit words for the actions that we do are not based around any religion. So yeah, the original teachings started about 5,000 years ago, way back when. The style of yoga that we talk about, Hatha yoga, started coming into play about 1,500 years ago, so it's really old. However, modern yoga that we do these days actually came into play a bit over 100 years ago with Krishnamacharya. At this point in time, yoga had kind of been lost, and he sort of revamped it and created lots of things like yoga alignment, and he worked with masters for years and years and started to spread the word, if you like, of yoga and what it's about, and started reteaching it to the world. And then around about in the 50s, yoga started to branch out towards the Western world, and now we have this crazy yoga empire. That's terrible. Yogis would not appreciate me calling it an empire. Yoga has been very successful in the world today, and we have a lot of teachers, which is funny, like a lot of people who do and teach yoga are female, which is completely different to how it was initially created, which is actually similar to how Pilates was created, but we'll get into that. The word yoga itself actually means union or unity, and I like to think of that as we're trying to unite your body, your mind, and your breath all together as you're doing a yoga practice. But it also has so much more behind it when you start to look into the philosophy of yoga. So when we're talking about yoga philosophy, there's a lot to it. Usually you start to talk about the 8 limbs of yoga. One of them is asana, which is your physical practice, but then there are 7 other ones that are completely separate to that. So you've got things like breathing, pranayama, you've got your meditation, concentration. There are even things called yamas and niyamas, which are all about how you treat the world and how you treat yourself. So it has this whole massive philosophy behind it that is not separate but additional to the actual physicality of the practice. In contrast to this, Pilates was created probably getting close to 100 years ago now by a German man called Joseph Pilates, who created this exercise which he called controlology, which nowadays we know as Pilates. It was originally created actually for boxers, and just like yoga, it was just taught to men at the very beginning, but branched out to women, and these days we have many women who do Pilates, who teach Pilates, and most definitely more than men, even though it's great for everybody. Similar to yoga, there are principles behind Pilates, things like postural alignment, centering and control, precision, relaxation, stamina. There's actually 6 different principles of Pilates, which we try and implement into every different class. It was basically designed as a form of exercise that would stretch, strengthen, improve your postural alignment and strengthen your core muscles. Okay, let's get into a bit more of the specifics. So talking about yoga in terms of breathing and mentality, yoga has a lot of different breathing styles, which we call pranayama, but I would say the most generic that I can talk to you about is probably a ujjayi breath, which is, in really basic terms, it is breathing in through your nose, out through your nose. You actually kind of restrict your throat a little bit, so it's like when you go, you want to make that kind of sound, but going out through your nose. So I'm not sure if you can hear, but it's like, the idea is you're breathing deep down into the very bottom of your lungs and exhaling completely. And the restricting the epiglottis is meant to help with that. So also in terms of the mentality you're meant to have while practicing yoga, generally being about being in the present moment, being aware of what you're doing and not letting things like ego and other things affect you. It's about being with yourself and becoming your true self. So there's a lot of really deep philosophical stuff that goes behind a yoga mentality type thing. In Pilates, the breathing is quite different in that we are engaging your core very strongly for pretty much all of it. It makes it harder to breathe really deep down, like your tummy can't move with your breath as much. So we breathe in through the nose and we sigh out the mouth as you do things, and this helps you to engage your core a little bit more. I think it was also at the time Joseph Pilates thought that breathing out the mouth would make sure that you got all the air out of your lungs, but these days we know that you can do that with breathing out your nose as well. So silly Joseph Pilates. And you think about breathing more into the sides of your ribs rather than down into your tummy. In terms of the mentality, there's a lot less than yoga, it's a lot less philosophical, but we are looking at improving your mental health as well as your physical health while you're doing it. So there's a lot to focus on in terms of breathing and making sure you're engaging muscles. And again, we try and focus in on the present moment because, you know, doing exercise really helps your brain and you want to maximize the potential of that. In terms of the actual physical movement, in yoga, we are doing full body movements. We are stretching, strengthening. It's mainly, if you want to think of it as a workout kind of terms, it is body weight work most of the time, unless you do some things in like Iyengar style where you use other props and stuff like that. And we move through different levels, so we have different things standing up, different things on all fours or sitting, and then other ones when you're lying down. There are hundreds of poses nowadays. They definitely all didn't exist when yoga was initially created. I kind of have a weird relationship with yoga alignment because, you know, initially alignment wasn't really a thing. It was more about what feels good within your body. But now when we've learnt lots about, oh, if your knee goes slightly this way, you could dislocate it, things like that, particularly with all the legalities of teaching a class, you have to be really aware of alignment. I think the most important part is you're not concerned about alignment in terms of making sure that your poses look good. It should feel good and be safe. In terms of Pilates, in mat Pilates, you spend most of your time either lying down on your back or side or tummy or on all fours. There's a lot less work standing up, although there is some. So like I said before, it's about stretching, strengthening, posture alignment, and building core strength. When we say core strength, it's not just your six-pack abs, it's your full core area as well as shoulders, upper arms, your booty and the tops of your legs, things like that. I guess you can tell the difference the most when you actually see it being done. So I would encourage you to take a look at my past and future videos about yoga and Pilates, and you'll be able to see a significant difference in the actual movements. Okay, basic summary of that. Yoga is really old, has a lot of philosophy behind it, is more about whole body uniting with your breath and your thoughts rather than an actual workout. Pilates, created not as long ago, and is more about stretching and strengthening your core and working with postural alignment and things like that. So I hope that answered all your questions about the difference between yoga and Pilates. If you have any more questions, feel free to pop them in the comments below or send me a message on any of my socials, which are also linked below. So make sure you find me and follow me. Otherwise, don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. And thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time.